Hi, I'm going to give you a little bit of guidance for paper 2 question 5, which is the big question where 40 marks on paper 2, and that's your argument question. Now I've just got an example of a question here that could be asked, you might be asked. Our obsession with social media has become dangerous. We need to focus less on our phones and more on the world around us. Write a speech aimed at your peers about your view on this topic. Now this bit here, the statement, should not be referenced at any point in your answer. The reason why they include the statement is to give you a background for your views. So in case you can't think of anything to talk about, this is kind of a springboard for you to be thinking about what you could discuss. But in essence, I suggest that you just take the key words out of the statement. So here it's simply social media. Is social media dangerous? And then you need to think about what the form is. So the form here is a speech. If it's a letter, you've obviously got different formats that you need to use. So here is a speech, which means you're going to be talking to an audience and trying to convince them. It's aimed at your peers, and this means people your age. So there is obviously a warning behind this. Though you would talk to your friends using slang and things like that, you won't hear. But you do need to think about what people your age care about, not just what older people would care about. Okay. Now it's worth 24 marks for content and 16 marks for your spag. So your 24 marks is going to be based around making sure that it's got some fluency to it, that you've got a good argument, a strong argument, force behind it, good tone, and then your 16 marks is going to be for your sentence length, your vocabulary as well, and your accuracy. Okay, so your starting point, something that I've worked a lot on recently is something called reflect. Now this is to make sure that you come up with as many points as possible. Okay, and it stands for rights. Well, the E's can be any way around, but education, economy, family, lifestyle, environment, communication, and traditions or morals. Okay, now this is just to come up with as many ideas in your planning as possible, because hopefully in your planning you're going to come up with some sort of agree and disagree. Okay, so I suggest you don't put agree, disagree, because that really confuses matters. What you're going to want is social media is good and social media is bad. And then what you do is if you can't think of any ideas, or if you know that you're going to the exam, you always get a little bit confused. You just work your way down this list and you think, can I think of anything that might link to those? So social media is linking to rights. Well, it's our right to use new technology. So you might have here, it's a right to use new technology. Education, well, it can be good for education because you can learn about the world. I mean, the internet, after all, is brilliant for learning, as we're trying to demonstrate here. But obviously, we know that social media could be bad because of bullying in schools. The economy. Advertising is a great thing for the economy. However, well, social media being bad for the economy, I'm not sure we could actually argue that. So for family and friends, social media helps us keep in touch. However, it also distracts us. For our lifestyle, it's good to learn new ways of being healthy. But I don't think we can deny that it stops us going outside to an extent. Or if we are, we're on our phones and we're not really paying attention to the outside world. Environment is difficult to link here. I mean, you could argue that social media is good for the environment because it spreads awareness. Perhaps. Communication is a big reason why social media is good. So there, I'm just going to put communication down because it's good for communication. However, I mean, we can link it to bullying, or we could use it, link it to predators who communicate with us, and we don't want to. Traditions and morals, you would think about whether or not the traditions of communication are worth holding on to. Now, I'm not writing in full sentences here because you shouldn't be. In your plan, you're simply trying to come up with your best points, and this is going to help you to come up with more points. And then all you do is you circle the side that you agree with most. You circle the side that you think is going to be your strongest, and then you number the ones that you think are going to be your best points. So I'm going to put these two together in my number 1. That's going to be my number 2. That's going to be my number 3. And you only need 3 problems, so that's absolutely sufficient. Okay. Now, your planning is pretty much done after you've done that. That's all you needed to focus on. But just to help you out with your structure, this is what we've learnt. So your first bit is your hook, and then I suggest you either have rhetorical questions, like a statement, brief history. Now, if you know that you struggle with opening your answer, do a rhetorical question. So all you've got to do is turn this into a question. Is social media dangerous? It's quite a nice opening. It works. It's easy. So don't fret too much about it. Your you paragraph is next, and that's putting people into the position of someone who might experience one of these things. Now, if you're arguing that social media is bad, you might describe the life of someone who's bullied via social media. If you argue that social media is good, you might describe the world from someone's perspective who doesn't get to use social media, who gets left out, and who doesn't, get all these benefits. Your problem paragraphs are your 3 main problems. Now here, in very small writing, I've written what can go into each of these problem paragraphs. So you introduce the issue, you give real life evidence for it. That's really important. So use brand names, use examples. So if you're talking about stopping us from going outside or distracting us from our family, you would use real life examples where people are distracted from their family. You might use examples of the TV. Okay, you might use examples from regular. You might talk about Snapchat in that bit there. So use brand names is really important to try and do here because you want to make it realistic, plausible. Then how it might affect the reader. Now remember, your readers are your peers, and it's actually they wouldn't be reading it, they'd be listening to it. So you want to make them care about how that's going to affect them. Don't just tell them it's bad. Tell them that it's going to make them ill. Tell them that it's going to stop them from being happy. It's going to damage their mental welfare, their well-being. That's how it's going to affect them. And then finally, how it might look in the future. So what is a world that relies on social media to get by? And that's your scary picture. And you do that for each of these things. Okay. Then is your counter argument. Your counter argument should not take away from your purpose. Your counter argument should be, some people say the other side, but they're wrong because of this. And you can use this to help with this, because I would probably use the weakest part of this. So I might say, well, some people say that this is that social media provides us with good communication. However, and then I would argue back with one of these points here. So it's not about drifting onto the other side. You need to make sure that you crash it down and that you show it's not a good argument for the other side. So some people assume that that social media is the best way to communicate in today's society. However, and then give loads of warnings, loads of consequences. Warn it's wrong. Now, your solution doesn't necessarily need to be a solve the world. It could just be, isn't it about time that we appreciated social media for what it could be? And then finally, you finish on something that links to your beginning, and not thank you for listening to my argument. Go for something a little bit more punchy. And that's probably the best advice that I can give to you for paper 2 question 5. My other advice is to practice and to read and to go on websites like The Guardian and actually read newspaper opinion articles, because that's how you're going to make sure that your argument is fluent and successful.